I stared at the job application on my screen, my finger hovering over the mouse. The name jumped out at me. Michael Bennett, senior finance position. My dear older brother, the golden child who once told me I'd never amount to anything, was now applying to work at my company. He had no idea I owned it. 10 years earlier, I sat at our family's dining room table, clutching my acceptance letter to MIT. I'd earned a partial scholarship to study computer science, but would need help with the remaining tuition. At 18, I thought my parents would be proud. Instead, my father's face turned red with rage. Computer science? He spat. What kind of career is that for someone who can barely pass high school math? I tried to explain that I'd actually gotten straight A's in math, but he wasn't listening. My mother sat silently while my brother Michael smirked from across the table. "You're not cut out for MIT," Michael said, adjusting his Harvard Business School sweatshirt. "You should be realistic about your limitations." My sister Sophie nodded in agreement. "Seriously, Lily, you're not exactly the brightest bulb. Remember when you couldn't even figure out how to set up your own email?" I did remember. I was 12, and they'd deliberately given me wrong instructions, then laughed when I got frustrated. It was just one of countless jokes at my expense. "I got accepted," I said quietly. "They don't accept people who can't handle the work." My father slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. We're not wasting money sending you to MIT when you'll just drop out. The answer is no." "But my scholarship." I said no. He stood up, towering over me. "If you're so smart, figure out how to pay for it yourself. We're done discussing this." I looked at my mother, hoping for support. She just stirred her tea, avoiding my eyes. That night, I heard them talking in the study. "She's always been the problem child," my father said. "Never as sharp as Michael, never as socially adept as Sophie. Better to cut our losses now." My mother's voice was soft but clear. Maybe she could take some business classes at the community college. Learn to be a secretary or something practical. I packed my bags that night. They found my note the next morning. "Don't worry about cutting your losses. I'll figure it out myself." My father's response was to change the locks and freeze my bank account. I had $342 to my name, a laptop I'd saved up for by tutoring kids in math, ironically, and a dream that felt increasingly impossible. But I also had something my family never knew about. I'd been coding since I was 14, building websites and small applications for local businesses under a pseudonym. One of my clients was Mrs. Chen, who owned a small tech consulting firm. When I showed up at her office with everything I owned in a backpack, she didn't ask questions. She just gave me a job and let me sleep on the couch in her office for 2 months. "Your family is foolish," she said one night, finding me still working at 2 a.m. "But their foolishness will be your fuel. Use it." I did. I worked for Mrs. Chen during the day, took online classes at night, and kept building my own projects whenever I could. One of those projects was an algorithm that could predict consumer behavior patterns with unprecedented accuracy. I called it PredictIQ. Mrs. Chen was the first person to see its potential. "This could revolutionize how businesses understand their customers," she said, reviewing my code. "Have you thought about seeking investors?" I hadn't. I was too busy trying to survive. But Mrs. Chen had connections. She arranged meetings, helped me prepare presentations, taught me how to navigate the business world that my family had always claimed I couldn't understand. The first investor meeting was terrifying. 5 men in expensive suits, all looking skeptically at the young woman in second-hand clothes presenting complex algorithms. But when I demonstrated PredictIQ's capabilities, their skepticism turned to interest. "How much are you seeking for initial funding?" one of them asked. I quoted the number Mrs. Chen and I had calculated, $2 million for 15% equity. They countered with $5 million for 25%. By the end of that meeting, I had more money in promised investment than my family had spent on Michael's entire education. I incorporated my company under a different name, Alexandra Chen, taking Mrs. Chen's surname as a tribute to the woman who believed in me. I didn't want my family finding me through corporate records. The company was called Nova Technologies, and PredictIQ was just the beginning. 3 years later, Nova had grown from a tiny startup to a major player in business intelligence software. We had offices in 3 cities, over 200 employees, and a valuation that made venture capitalists salivate. I kept my identity private, working through proxy executives for public meetings. The media speculated about the mysterious Alexandra Chen, but few people knew who really ran Nova. I preferred it that way. Then came the economic downturn. Companies started laying off workers, including Bennett Financial, where my brother had been working his way up the corporate ladder. I watched from afar as my family's comfortable world began to crumble. Michael lost his job when Bennett Financial downsized. Sophie's luxury real estate business dried up. My father's investment portfolio took massive hits. And now here was Michael's job application on my screen, along with Sophie's from last week, both seeking positions at Nova Technologies, the company their stupid sister had built. The irony would have been delicious if it didn't hurt so much. I clicked through Michael's application. His resume was impressive on paper: Harvard MBA, years of experience, glowing recommendations. But I remembered how he used to belittle me, how he told everyone I was the family disappointment. Sophie's application was similar, full of prestigious institutions and inflated achievements. She was applying for a marketing director position, probably assuming her socialite connections would guarantee her the role. A notification popped up on my screen. My father had just published a LinkedIn post praising Nova Technologies, mentioning that both his highly qualified children were pursuing opportunities with this innovative industry leader. He had no idea he was praising the company built by the daughter he'd thrown away. I sat back in my chair, looking out over the city from my penthouse office. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. On my desk sat the only personal photo I kept at work. Mrs. Chen and me at Nova's first office opening, both of us beaming at the camera. "What would you do?" I asked her photo softly. My intercom buzzed. "Ms. Chen, your 4 o'clock is here. The interview candidate for senior finance." I took a deep breath. Sent him in. It was time for Michael to meet the CEO of Nova Technologies. Time for my brother to look me in the eye and explain why he deserved a place in my company. I straightened my designer blazer, no secondhand clothes anymore, and touched the MIT class ring on my finger. A small reminder of the dream I'd achieved despite them. The door opened and Michael walked in, his confident smile faltering slightly as recognition dawned. "Hello, Michael," I said calmly. "Please have a seat. Let's discuss your qualifications." His face went through a range of emotions: shock, confusion, disbelief, and finally, fear. He knew in that moment that everything was about to change, and I was just getting started. Michael sank into the chair across from my desk, his expensive suit suddenly seeming to shrink around him. The confidence that had carried him through life was evaporating with each passing second. "Lily," he finally managed. This is Alexandra Chen," I finished for him. "Yes, that's the name I go by now. Though I'm surprised you didn't recognize it earlier. Mrs. Chen, you remember her? The woman you used to mock for running a tiny, insignificant tech shop?" He swallowed hard. I had no idea. Clearly, I picked up his resume, scanning it with deliberate slowness. Impressive credentials: Harvard MBA, executive positions, leadership roles. "Tell me, did you ever figure out how to properly code an email? Since that was apparently such a crucial skill you thought I lacked." His face flushed at the reminder of his past cruelty. "Listen, Lily, about the past." "Ms. Chen," I corrected him. "Let's keep this professional. After all, this is a job interview." The next 30 minutes were the most satisfying of my life. I questioned every point on his resume, challenged every accomplishment, made him explain every career decision. Not out of spite, but because I needed him to understand exactly what he was asking for. "Your last position," I said, "at Bennett Financial. You were laid off." "Downsizing," he mumbled. "The whole sector took a hit." "Interesting, because according to my sources, you were actually laid off for pushing risky investment strategies that cost the company millions. Care to explain that discrepancy?" He shifted uncomfortably. "How did you?" "I'm the CEO of a business intelligence company, Michael. We specialize in knowing things." I closed his file. "Tell me why you want to work at Nova Technologies." "Well, your company's reputation." "No," I cut him off. "The real reason. Why are you here?" He deflated, the last of his pretense crumbling. "I need this job. Dad's investments tanked, Sophie's real estate business is failing, and no one in finance will touch me after Bennett. Nova is, was my last hope. I let the silence stretch for a moment. And what makes you think you deserve this opportunity? He trailed off, genuinely seeming to think about it for the first time. I don't know. Just then, my intercom buzzed. Ms. Chen, your sister Sophie has arrived early for her interview. Perfect timing. Send her in, I said. Sophie strutted in, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She stopped dead when she saw Michael then me. What is this? She demanded. Some kind of joke. Please, sit down, I gestured to the other chair. We were just discussing family history. The next few minutes were chaos. Sophie tried to maintain her socialite composure while processing the fact that her useless sister was now her potential boss. Michael sat in stunned silence. I simply waited. Does Dad know? Sophie finally asked. Not yet. Though I imagine he'll find out soon, given how enthusiastically he's been promoting Nova Technologies on LinkedIn. My phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Your father just arrived in the lobby. Says he's here to personally recommend his children. I smiled. In fact, why don't we make this a full family reunion? Send him up, I told my assistant. When my father walked in, his confident stride faltered. He looked from Michael to Sophie to me, his face going through the same emotions theirs had. Hello, Dad, I said calmly. We were just discussing job opportunities at my company. Please, join us. He stood there, frozen, looking like he'd seen a ghost. In a way, he had, the ghost of the daughter he'd dismissed and discarded. You, he started, then stopped. Yes, me. The daughter you kicked out for daring to dream of MIT. The one you call useless. I stood up, my height now matching his. The one who built $1 billion company while you were busy praising Michael's mediocre achievements and Sophie's hollow successes. Lily, we didn't, Sophie began. Ms. Chen, I corrected again. And yes, you did. All of you. You spent years convincing yourselves I was worthless because I didn't fit your narrow definition of success. Well, now look where we are. I pressed a button on my desk, and the wall screen came to life, displaying Nova's latest financial reports, client list, and market valuation. This is what your useless daughter built, without your money, without your connections, without your support. In fact, your only contribution was showing me exactly what kind of person I didn't want to be. My father found his voice. We were wrong. Obviously, but we're still family. Family? I laughed. Family doesn't throw their daughter out at 18. Family doesn't mock and belittle and dismiss. The only family I've had for the past 10 years is Mrs. Chen, who believed in me when you couldn't be bothered to try. I picked up their applications. You want jobs? Fine, here's what's going to happen. You'll start at entry-level positions, no special treatment, no executive roles. You'll work your way up based on actual merit, not family connections. And if you ever mention our relationship to anyone in this company, you're done. Those are my terms. Entry-level? Sophie looked horrified. But my experience is irrelevant. I cut her off. This is a technology company, Sophie. We need people who understand innovation, not social climbing. You want to work here. Prove you can learn, grow, and contribute without riding on someone else's coattails. Michael nodded slowly. That's fair. More than fair, actually. My father stood straighter. Lily, Ms. Chen, I know we can't undo the past. But please, give us a chance, though. To what? Make amends? Rebuild bridges? This isn't about reconciliation, Dad. This is business. Pure and simple. I sat back down, every inch the CDO. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. The jobs are available under those terms, no negotiation. Now, I believe we're done here. They filed out silently, looking shell-shocked. As the door closed behind them, I let out a long breath. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. You did well, she said softly. Did I? I asked. Part of me wanted to reject them outright. She smiled. That's why you didn't. Revenge is easy. Teaching them to be better. That's the real challenge. 6 months later, I stood on stage at our annual company meeting, announcing Nova's expansion into international markets. In the audience, I could see Michael in his entry-level analyst position, taking notes and actually paying attention. Sophie was in customer service, learning for the first time in her life what it meant to work without privilege to fall back on. They were different people now. Humbler. Harder working, still not family, that bridge had burned too thoroughly, but maybe, eventually, they could become something else. Employees I could respect. My father had declined the job offer. His pride wouldn't let him work under his daughter's authority. Instead, he sent a long email apologizing for the past and asking to meet for coffee sometime. I haven't replied yet. Maybe someday I will. For now, I focus on running my company, mentoring young entrepreneurs who remind me of myself at 18. And having weekly dinners with Mrs. Chen, who still tells me I'm too soft on them sometimes. They're lucky you gave them any chance at all, she said during our last dinner. Maybe, but as I watch them learn and struggle and slowly earn their places at Nova, I realize something. Success isn't just about proving others wrong. Sometimes it's about giving them the chance to prove themselves wrong. Michael and Sophie will never be executives at Nova. They'll never have the power they once took for granted. But they might. Finally learn the lesson I had to learn alone. True worth isn't inherited or given. It's earned one day at a time through hard work and humility. As for me, I kept the name Alexandra Chen, not to hide anymore, but because it reminds me of who believed in me when no one else would. My MIT ring still sits on my finger, and my useless computer science degree hangs in my office alongside Nova's many awards. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's becoming so successful that they have to come to you for help, and then teaching them the lessons they should have learned long ago. The useless daughter they threw away now signs their paychecks, and every time they cash those checks, they're reminded of exactly how wrong they were. That's worth more than revenge could ever be.